Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. We will begin with chapter 46, verse 2. We read this pasuk yesterday. Yosef has conveyed the message to Yaakov that he's alive. And now Yaakov has to contemplate this idea of going down to Egypt. I should clarify, I don't think I mentioned this yesterday. It's fascinating. If you look at verse 28, the last pasuk in the preceding chapter, Yisrael remarks how remarkable it is that his son is alive. He says, I'm going to go down and see him before I die. That does not sound like he's moving to Egypt. That sounds like he's going to Egypt for 2 days, not to fix anything, but to see his child. And then it sounds like he's going back to Israel. And now God appears to him. He brings sacrifices, and now God appears to him. Chapter 46, verse 2. Vayomer Elokim Yisrael b'maros halayla. Elokim said to Yisrael in the vision of the night, Vayomer Yaakov, Yaakov. And he refers to him as Yaakov. Vayomer Hineni, and Yaakov says, here I am. Why is he referred to as Yaakov and not Yisrael? God is the one who changed his name to Yisrael. Ramban on Pasuk Beis, Vayomer Yaakov, Yaakov. Achar she'amer lo Hashem, lo yikari shimcha od Yaakov kim Yisrael yiyashmecha. After God had told him, your name will no longer be Yaakov, rather your name will be Yisrael. God should refer to him by the name that he references for him. And he's mentioned various times in this section as Yisrael. Avokaro Yaakov, but God refers to him as Yaakov, lirmos, to allude, to hint, ki ata lo yashrim elokim v'manashim bayuchal. Why is he given the name of Israel? The reason he's given the name of the reason he's given the name of Israel is because he's grappled with a celestial being and with man, and he's overcome. It's not what's going to happen this time. He and his offspring will end up, his offspring will end up in a house of slaves, until God ultimately bring his offspring out of Egypt. Now the exile begins. And again, shockingly, they come to town as the mishpacha of number 2 man of the country, but in a relatively brief period of time, that will all be forgotten. And this descent is the beginning of the exile. And this is not going to be a story of Jewish success, at least not from a perspective of power and authority and the like. So that's why God refers to him as Yaakov. You're going to have to, you and your family are going to have to draw on abilities that you've developed earlier in your life when things weren't going your way. Yaakov Ubanav. Ramban points out in a few psukim, we'll see part of it soon. The Torah gives the family tree of Yaakov and his family after, upon their descent into Egypt. And the introductory pasuk refers to the names of Bnei Yisrael coming to Egypt, Yaakov and his sons. Again, it refers to them as Yaakov. Kim b'shem Bnei Yisrael yavohu shama. Their original descent into Egypt is in the mode of Yisrael, that everything's going great. Ki yifru habanim, they'll become fruitful there. The yirbu v'yigadel shema muchvodam, things will be great for the Jews in Egypt. So when they go down, they'll be Bnei Yisrael. Avo Yaakov hu ata b'rito sham. But personally, God has conveyed to Yaakov the understanding that this is going to be ephemeral. All the good news is going to be ephemeral. And ultimately, the experience is going to be much more Yaakov experience. So they're coming as Bnei Yisrael, but individually, Yaakov knows that he's wearing his Yaakov hat as he goes down to Egypt, not his Yisrael hat. Very interesting, Ramban. Okay, let's go on to verse 15. In the middle of the family tree, we've gone through all the children of Leah, a large family, of course. And in verse 15, it says, we have just got finished mentioning the children of Leah, and of course Dinah, we mentioned, and their grandchildren and her grandchildren, kol nefesh banav uvnosav shloshim v'shalosh. The total is of Leah's branch of the family is 33. We have a very beloved member of the family who loves to quote gematrias in his speeches at simchas, and there are definitely different times where I've taken upon myself to actually check if the numbers work out at least once during the speech. So lahavdil, the numbers don't work out in this pasuk. If you count the people mentioned in the previous pasukim, it's 32, not 33. And the Torah says it's 33 people. What's going on? What of course adds to this is the grand total. If I asked you how many members of the family listed go down to Egypt, you would say everybody knows that's 70. Well, it's 70 based on the assumption that this is 33. For the record, if it's one off, it's 69. So it's just strange. Why would the Torah say, a number that's not? So what's going on? What are we missing? Ramban and Pasuk Tesvav. This is a lengthy Ramban. We do this every now and then, but this is just a very famous issue. Hopefully it'll be worthwhile. Ramban and Pasuk Tesvav Shloshim v'Shalosh. B'frata v'yatamotzi el Shloshim v'Shtayim. When you count them, it's only 32. Elazu Yocheved Shonolda Bichnisasan Le'ir. This is Rashi cites this as well. It's Gemara and Sota. Gemara says that actually there's a missing number 33. Yocheved, the daughter of Levi, who was born as they enter Egypt. As they enter the gates of Egypt, Yocheved is born. So she wasn't alive upon their descent, and so she's not listed, but she's born on their way. Where in the world does that come from? Why Yocheved? What's this about? Shenemar Asher Yolda Osal Levi B'Mitzrayim. Later on in the Torah, Yocheved, by the way, just to give everybody context, is the mother of Moshe Rabbeinu. Yocheved, it says she was born to Levi in Egypt. And so we make an interesting comment. We say, Leidasa b'Mitzrayim ve'ein horasa b'Mitzrayim. She was born in Egypt, but not conceived in Egypt. Okay, so that's the answer according to the Gemara, that's number 33. Yocheved wasn't around when they left, but she was around upon their entry. We have Avram, Heishiv, Yomer, Gizetema. The Ibn Ezra asks on this comment that Rashi cites. He says it's a very difficult thing to understand. In Cain, Lamalo Hiskra Kasva Pella, Shanasi Masha, Lida Moshe, Vihibas Meya, Ushloshim, Shana. The Ibn Ezra asks the most basic of questions. Great. Yocheved was born upon their entry into Egypt. Okay. How old was Moshe Rabbeinu when the Jews left Egypt? 80. How many years did the Jewish people stay in Egypt? 210. How old was Yocheved based on that math and based on assuming that Yocheved was born upon their entry into Egypt? 130 years old. Okay. The Ibn Ezra does not have a problem. I mean, especially during these times, the Ibn Ezra does not have a problem saying that Yocheved miraculously had a child at the age of 130. That doesn't bother the Ibn Ezra. What bothers the Ibn Ezra is, why would the Torah not make a big deal of it? Was it a big deal that Sarah bore Yitzchak at an advanced age? Yes, it's a big deal. How old was Sarah? Torah makes a very big deal of it. She was 90. Yocheved was 40 years older. So the Ibn Ezra says, according to this calculation, the Torah should make an even bigger deal about Yocheved. And it's just this, you have to, if you dig deep enough, you figure it all out. Why would that be? So the Ibn Ezra says, it must not be so. This must be a mistake. That's what the Ibn Ezra says. Another point the Ibn Ezra makes is you have in certain tefillos that based on other calculations, it means that Yocheved died at the age of 250. That sounds pretty good. Why would we not make a point of that? Okay, so that's a very basic question the Ibn Ezra is asking on this idea cited by Rashi. Very basic question. So now the Ramban is going to defend the Medrash. Again, the Rishonim always speak strongly to each other. Ramban says the Ibn Ezra thinks he's being smart. I need to respond to this. Omar, and I would like to say, the Ramban says, of course, it would be a remarkable miracle that Yocheved should bear Moshe at 130. It will be a hidden miracle. And so much of the Torah rests on hidden miracles. Kihi bas Levi atzmo, because she was the daughter of Levi, Levi the son of Yaakov. Lo misyaches love, k'moshe kasov asher yoldo osol Levi Mitzrayim. The pasuk we mentioned before refers to Yocheved as being born to Levi in Egypt. Now you could understand that pasuk, which this is how the Ibn Ezra would understand it. It doesn't mean she was Levi's daughter. It means she was born to the house of Levi. She was a descendant of Levi. They gave Levi a mazel tov in the Shabbat shirts for his granddaughter's birth. It doesn't mean he was the father. V'od kasov eis Yocheved dodaso. There's another pasuk which would seem to indicate that she was actually the daughter of Levi. Vim name Nomar ki olido sab bacharuso kasher holid kol banav v'isale dasach aridetol b'tzrayim ma'at nehi b'leidas Moshe zakenu ma'od k'minyan shamu rabosenu o karovlo. The Ramban says, look, it says in the pasuk that she's Levi's daughter. That's the bottom line. And you want to say that you want to say that she wasn't born upon entry into Egypt. You want to say she was born a little bit later. Okay, how many years do you want? 10 years, 20 years? What do you want? So then she's 110 when Moshe. What have you solved exactly? Unless you don't even accept that she was Levi's daughter. But the pasuk says she was Levi's daughter. Of course, like we said, we don't have to take that literally. It could be she was a descendant of Levi, whatever. Vim nomar shenoldo acher shifto mitzrayim yamim rabim v'nei nachshir sheholid oso acher ridoto mitzrayim chamishim v'sheva shana v'hu yiyeh ben mea shana ki b'ridoto haya ben mem gimel shanim v'nei yiyeh bazeh shnei ploim. The Ramban goes further with this idea of the basic assumption that Yocheved was Levi's daughter. So he says, okay, let's space things out more nicely. You want to say that she was born 57 years after their entry into Egypt. Okay, so now she's giving birth to Moshe at the spry age of 73. If I'm not getting my math, when you want that, let's go with that, says Ramban. I got news for you. That means Levi was 100 years old when he bore a daughter. You remember a miracle with that? Was somebody being 100 years old, a man being 100 years old when his daughter was born? That was Avram. That was also a big deal. So Ramban says, whichever way you pull this blanket, it's not going to work out smoothly. It's not going to be that she's 20 years old when she has a kid. It's just not going to be, unless you say that she wasn't the daughter of Levi. Unless you say, but the Ramban says it seems that she was the daughter of Levi. But I want to tell you a basic foundational point, and I see it's already 9:45. I don't want to rush it. We will continue this tomorrow, God willing. So we discussed today the Ramban's pshat as to why Hashem refers to Yaakov by the name Yaakov when he tells him they're going to be going down to Egypt. And we discussed the Ibn Ezra's question, attack of Rashi. We discussed the beginning of the Ramban's response to the Ibn Ezra, but the core of it we'll see tomorrow, God willing.